Okay.
Go ahead, Dave.
All right. The time being 4:30, I'd like to call this meeting of the Finance and Personnel Committee to order. May I motion to adopt the agenda? Tom so moves. Is there a second?
Second.
John seconds. Any changes to the agenda? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. All right. Next, approve the ordinance for the annexation of the Schultz Property and Correction Award. Is that Chad?
I can take that one. So as you guys know, we had the Schultz property, which was on Mill Street near, across the road from Building Supply. They annexed into the city. We've done the zoning. Sue found out in looking through it that it's one of those weird situations that because the assembly and the Senate district for that property was different because they were in the township, we basically have to make them their own ward temporarily for the time being because of those things. So your ordinance that you got in front of you right now goes through that process to make them basically their own ward. And then Sue says, once we go through the census process, we'll redraw the lines and then bring them back into, I think she said the second district at that point in time. So it's kind of a temporary thing. Sounds like you guys had to do it when Jim, somebody up north on the north side of town, when they annexed, you had to do the same thing.
Crane.
So
Yeah.
Jim Crane did it, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Why is she in second district and not third?
Sue said second district. I didn't look that up myself, but
She's already
it'll be
Gamey County.
redrawn once
So the
the
Gamey
Senate.
County.
Yeah,
That'd be third, wouldn't it?
Yep.
might be third.
Plus, what surprises me is Rusum is just about that far out in there in the district.
Yeah.
Rusum's
Basically, once you redraw the census lines,
Because they
that'll
were,
bring them in correctly.
they were annexed about 6 years ago.
No, that would be second.
No.
'Cause we end at Division Street.
No, she's out of Gamey County. Across the division.
Yeah, that's no.
Okay, well, that'll get figured out
Get
as
her,
part
yeah.
of the procedures there. Is there a motion to go ahead with this?
So move.
Mike?
Second.
Dave seconds. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, next, Finance Director's report. Judy?
All right. I'm going to be walking you through the year-end financial statements, estimated financial statements. Now, remember, they are not finalized until we have our actual audit, which is March 18th. So anybody who wants to be present that day, I'm not really sure yet, actually, if they're going to be here in person or if that's going to be virtual. When I talked to the auditor, she wasn't really sure either. They had no preference. I would prefer they come. It takes less time when they actually come in person. But we'll probably work through that as we get closer and see where things are at. So first of all, I'm going to tell you that our year ended a lot differently than I had anticipated. A lot of things happened last year, as we all know. There was a number of payouts that are booked on the expenditure side. We had COVID that a lot of our programs didn't run. And as we go through it's really actually a very positive message at the end of our year. I would not have expected this with everything that the city has went through last year. So with that being said, we're going to start with the expenditure side. And I will walk you through, this is the explanations that I have for each of the categories, but I think it would be easier on screen if I show you this screen and then talk about them. I'll probably decrease this just a little bit. Talk about them each individually and why they look the way they do. If you have any questions, please stop me as we go through the process. So we're going to start with mayor and council. So we have about $2,500 left in there, and all of that is the inability to go to meetings. I know a number of council people and the mayor usually attend league meetings. There's some other meetings that people attend depending on what those agendas look like. So because there were no meetings or a lot of meetings were virtual, it was a savings of motel stays and mileage. So that's $2,500 under mayor and council. You can see the largest portion that is over budget for us is our administration line item. And this is where you're going to see The biggest portion of this was our attorney fees and then our two individuals that had payouts. So all of that is within this dollar amount of $158,000. Then we move down to the insurance line item. So just about everything else is under or very explainable. Our insurance line item came in at $10,000, and that's because we couldn't do our PHAs. Normally, the employees take a blood screening each year for our wellness, and the city pays for that. And we were not able to do that this year, so that saved us $10,000. Public Works, a number of things amongst the Public Works. As you can see, there's $110,000 left in the Public Works. So the heating was done. I don't know if we're just, I know getting the new building, we were doing estimates, and as over time, I'm almost positive we reduced that heating bill again in 2021. But you're going to see that our estimates get better as we have more history. So one of the things I noticed as I was paging through is that the heating, there was money left in the heating for our city garage. We also had less snow, so we had overtime dollars. That one's always hard to budget for. I always budget for a lot of snow, and that way if we have money left over, that's a good thing. So we had money left in our overtime budget. The very big one was we had 2 open positions within our street department last year. So we had 2 open positions actually for 3 months. So that's a half of year if you add them together. Health insurance alone at a family plan is going to save you, $50,000 or $20,000. So that's where a lot of that Public Works savings came in. It didn't have, and then, over the whole entire budget, they also couldn't go to meetings. But when I look at this, I try to capitalize or capture those expenditures that are greater than $5,000 in savings, because otherwise we'd be sitting here all night, line item by line item, trying to figure out, exactly where the positives and negatives came in. But in the whole entire budget, nobody attended meetings and mileage. So I would say within the entire city, we saved $30,000, $40,000 within meetings. The police department is a whole different animal. They go to a lot of training and save a lot of money if they're not going to, but it's not a good thing. They need to go out and get their training. But so you're going to see that their line item was all training that they saved. But again, that's not always a good thing when they're not receiving their training. But it was just a year because of COVID that they weren't able to attend in person. Any questions on the Public Works?
Here's a question for the chief. How's 2021 look for your training?
Well, we just, all the chiefs and sheriffs met yesterday. We're going to get the SWAT team starting to train at the end of February here with certain rules with PPE and stuff. But we're hoping to get back to a little bit more normal, but I foresee that we're going to have a lot of video and a lot of training that's going to be done on, like through Zoom and stuff like that. Matter of fact, one of the grants that we just got, we got 5 tablets that we're going to be able to send with officers to do the training from home. I think we're going to see a little bit of an uptick with the courts kind of doing the same thing where they haven't opened yet, some of them in Outagamie County. So we'll be doing less travel and more testifying and training on computers over the next year.
Good, thank you.
Okay, then we move on to Parks, Building and Grounds, and then the Washington Center Gym. As you know, we could not hold a lot of those programs out over at the Washington Center Gym, so there was a lot of savings within those seasonal wages. Also had a lot of savings within the park seasonal wages. And then anytime you save in wages, you also save in fringes. The city pays a portion of FICA Medicare, and then any kind of health insurance. So anytime you're saving in wages, you're also saving in fringes. So it's twofold. So there it was seasonal wages, park and rec, the Washington Center Gym fringes, and also gasoline. We weren't running the bus as much, so you were seeing savings in that area. Oh, I'm sorry, that's down farther. The senior van and centers is down farther. Within the parks department, we saw the savings within gasoline in that line item. All right, then we'll move down to recreation. Again, you can see that we had a savings of $46,000 here. Again, seasonal wages, Fringes and overtime. With everything being shut down, this is just a continuous message between within all departments was the savings of those seasonal wages. And then once you save those, your fringes come after. Cable 3, you can see that there is an overage in Cable 3, but that's designated funds. So those dollars will be pulled out of the Cable 3 fund, and you'll see that when we go into the designated and undesignated fund, assigned and unassigned fund balance. I'll show you where those dollars come out. Swimming pool. Again, the swimming pool was shut down for quite a while. They didn't have swim lessons. So all of those seasonal wages, lifeguard wages were savings along with their fringes. Again, because they were shut down, the electric, water, and sewer bills were less. The heating bill was less. So a lot of this was just compounded with the closure of all of the things that happened last year with COVID. Senior van and center. Again, wages, fringes, gasoline. They weren't running the van. So you're saving seasonal wages because those are not full-time employees. So we weren't paying them while they weren't working. So you had those savings plus the van wasn't running. So there was gasoline savings there. So that's a lot of money. Your original budget's $95,000 and you're saving $27,000. You're talking a large dollar amount saved within $100,000 budget. So a quarter of it plus is saving. Not that we want this to continue into 2021, but I was just shocked at the amount of money that was spent on programs and seasonal wages and the amount of personnel that we have working in those areas. Now we're down to the police department, and that was $8,000, and all of that was in training. So they couldn't travel, go out and about, and participate in those training programs. Fire department, their saving was in $41,000, and theirs was salaries, change in staffing, fire personnel come and go, not quite as much as they used to. They're keeping them, longer and than they did in the past. So that's a positive thing, but just a change in staff can make that. And the biggest saving here was in inspections because they couldn't go out because of COVID and do inspections. So that was a big savings. Cemetery was over, but it was just a small dollar amount. And that just had to do with changing from an employee to contractual. And when you lose an employee in the middle of the month, you still have to pay their health insurance. So it was a little bit of an overage between the old and the new. So that's why we saw an overage in the cemetery. Social services, $10,000, we didn't have our fireworks. So there was a savings in that area. Library and museum, their savings were $32,000. So that had again to do with wages, salaries, overtime, fringes. The museum was very minimal. The library was more of those wages, salaries, and overtime. Down to capital replacement, we use designated funds. That's why you see that dollar amount overage. We actually use designated funds to make up the difference. And again, you'll see that in the assigned and designated and undesignated schedule. Equipment maintenance, we just went over by $1,000. So what this points to me is that we need to take a good look at our fleet. So once you start knocking on that $130,000 and our fleet is starting to cost us close to that, then we need to start thinking, are we not replacing our equipment quick enough? What kind of expenditures are we looking at? Are they big ones? Should we be replacing these, or should we be doing these large maintenance projects with our equipment? So I know we took a look at that and we discussed that as a group, as a staff, and looked at that as far as what will be suggested in purchases when we get to the capital side. Debt service, that was over just a little bit. I think we had some fees that weren't accounted for, about $1,000. Community development was just very slightly over also. And then capital projects. there was some projects that were going to be moved in the 2021 budget year. So that left us with $270,000 on the expenditure side. Some of these things don't account for whether we would designate or designate these funds, and those are the equipment line items, the capital line items, and the debt line items. They are considered their own budget. So when you look at the memo that I put together, the actual dollar amount that we will look at designated is at $267,000. Because again, we subtract out the capital side of this, the equipment, maintenance, replacement, the projects, and then the debt service. So the memo points out those differences up here. So the actual amount that we will be looking at tonight to designate is $267,630, and that's indicated right here. Any questions on that? Comments?
Very thorough report,
I'm sorry?
very thorough.
Good explanations, yes. Good point, Craig.
Thank you. It was actually very interesting going through the year with everything that happened and just seeing how it all ended up at the end of the year with all the things that we went through, COVID and payouts and things of that nature. So very positive at the end of the year.
I'm very
Great to
surprised.
see.
I'm just very surprised there is a positive number at the end of the year.
Absolutely. So very, very good to see.
All the negative things that happen.
All right, then we will move on to the revenue side. I know Michelle puts these together for me, and I forget she has these little return to the agendas at the bottom of here. All right, so now we'll go through the revenue side, and this is what that looks like. So you can see property tax we collect in total. I like the way this is done. Saves the city of New London lots of headaches. So we collect the first installment. As any of you that have visited us in the last month and a half will notice that we were really busy within our office in the end of December, right before Christmas, till about a week ago. Things have just started settling down for tax collection. Then what happens is I settle with both the counties. So they pay the city of New London in whole. We don't have to deal with any delinquencies or any, the personal property tax we do, but it's such a small dollar amount of our tax collection compared to the real estate tax. So it's really nice to be able to get the collection from the county and have them pay us in whole, and then they can deal with all the collection issues. So I appreciate that they take that under their wing. So we do 100% collection on our property tax. Tax equivalents, we had a little bit more, about 20,000 more in collection from the utility than I anticipated. I get an estimate every year from the utility, and they never know really what that's going to look like until the tax rates come in. So it's just an estimate when I get it from them. Sometimes I can be low, sometimes I can be high. So last year I was just a little bit low. Special assessments is another one. We usually put about $1,000 in there. We're not sure. We have some old assessments where if parcels are sold and we have no idea whether these parcels are going to be sold or they're not going to be sold. So we put $1,000 in there, not even sure that we're going to get $1,000. Normally we are collecting more than that. As you can see, last year we collected about $6,600 more than we thought, or $5,600 more than we thought. Shared revenue is another one that I was not anticipating that additional $28,000. And that was an increase in the net book value. There was a new concrete wall put up over at the Warner West substation. So that was done 2 years ago, and that came, that increase came this year for us. So that I even sent a message to the state because I didn't really want to book it until I knew that it was really ours. I was afraid maybe they made a mistake or it wasn't, a different city in New London. So I do have that email, and yes, she pointed to that concrete wall. And then I actually called Jay and I said, did that concrete wall go up? And he's like, yes, it did. So then I was able to feel comfortable with the extra almost $30,000 that we received. Fines and forfeitures, that's the court. They were down for a lot of months, so I didn't think that was too bad, coming in about $20,000 lower than anticipated. Here's the big one, public charges for services. And that was, all of our park and rec programs, swim lessons, just all of those income worker, or the Washington Center, all of those programs that go on for us. This is the revenue side that was lost. As you can see the increase on the expenditure side, but you also have this $100,000 reduction in revenue on this side. Intergovernmental charges, that increase was the money that we collected from the townships for bringing debris to the cemetery. So we had a little bit more money, and we'll be seeing that every year. So I'll be increasing that revenue side. Grants and donations, the biggest increase in that was, and I'm glad that we saw this side of our equation, was the Roots to Recovery grant that we got from the state of Wisconsin. That was $121,000. That's what really made us make ends meet on this revenue side. So that was a positive thing for us. Interest revenue, I came about $25,000 short this year, although I have two big investments that I have not booked yet. And again, when I present this to you, these are estimates. So I have two investments that have not been booked in. I would expect this to be more at zero when it comes in and we're audited. I do this on purpose because I do not know, as much as I ask and request, do we have any bills? Do we have any more bills? Do we have any more bills? I know from being here as long as I have, there's going to be more bills. So you don't want to make this zero. So I don't want to leave myself with no revenue so that I can't pay those bills that I don't know about today. So I do have $24,000 sitting there for those bills that I know are coming. Tif increments, we just received a little bit more than anticipated. So at the end of the day, we have about $50,000 extra. So like I said, that $124,000 in Roots Recovery Grant really helped us out on this side, and the chief helped me with that. So thank goodness that was offered to us and that we took full advantage of it. That was the most that we could get. I know Clintonville at one time offered theirs because they weren't going to spend it. I never heard back from them. I was like, yes, I'm going to take it, but are you sure? And I'm hoping they maximized it and went back and rethought that. But that was the maximum that we could get. So again, we take out for capital side. So at the end of the day, $53,000 of this is what we look at the general fund side when we designate. So if we go back to the memo, this is I want this a little bigger because I can't see it. So our revenue is at 53,634. Our expenditure savings that I talked about was 267. When we went through and talked about the 2021 budget, so this should have said during the 2021 budget process, we talked about taking that Roots to Recovery money and using it already for capital projects. We already were forward thinking, and we know every year that capital is the most important, or the money that we try to squeeze out of our budget as much as we can. So we did take $148,000 and already earmark it. So we had to take that away from our savings on the expenditure side and our overage on the revenue. So that left us with $173,000 at the end of 2020 for us to say, okay, what are we going to do with this? What should we do with this? And this committee has decided in years past that there is no better place for this money than capital projects. Two things, capital projects and economic development. Because it's a place where we're continuously squeezing and pushing and your operational side goes up and what goes down. And that's your capital side because something has to give. So we've always decided that we should utilize the best utilization of those funds is not within our operational budget because you start growing that and you're going to get yourself in trouble. So earmark these to help the capital side so you can buy that another piece of equipment or you can buy, do that other project. So my recommendation with this additional 173,000 is that we take 30,000 of it and we earmark that in economic development. We know that we have utilized a lot of those designated funds for, to help our downtown this year. I can't remember the name of the grant that we gave to the downtown. And then we utilize some of those funds for, there was two things. That drives me crazy when I can't remember. The Facade program and then the small business COVID fund. So those two, we pretty much wiped out our economic development. So when those things happen, I'm always thinking about, okay, at the end of the year, if we have something, we're going to stick some money back in there because we know now we're looking at the downtown development. So that way, hey, if we need to, hire somebody, we're not saying, okay, how are we going to pay for this? We have some funding available, some flexibility within those designated funds to help out if you need them. So it is my recommendation that we take that money and designate them as indicated, 30,000 to economic development and $140,000 to capital projects fund. And the way this will work is if you're all kind of in agreement with that, or if you have any other suggestions or something you want to consider, we can go through the assigned and unassigned fund balances. And then in there, I have these built in. So once we get to line item,
Or we amend the budget.
I'm sorry, 4?
Yeah, or we amend the budget. Is it,
The budget amendment has to be done because we went over in administrative, and that's just
okay.
statutorily
not-
we have to do this. So this is number 5 where we're assigning fund
Okay,
balance.
Okay,
That's where this is going to be done as a motion. So we don't really need a motion right now.
okay.
But when I go through assigned and unassigned fund balance, I have a number of things on there.
Okay.
So you can kind of do everything at one time and say, yep, that looks good. And we'll move forward from here.
Is 30,000 enough to pay everything back that we did this year? With the COVID grants or whatever and Class 8?
Yep,
However you
so-
say that word.
$19,800 was spent in the COVID fund and then $9,200 in the facade program. So you're putting just about as much back in as was paid out.
And hopefully we don't have to worry about a COVID fund program again. Hopefully that the COVID thing slows down a
Yeah.
little bit. So we
Yeah,
don't,
well-
until we can focus that money back into the facade program. But there's also, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's also operating funds in the economic development for certain things as well.
Correct.
Yep.
So you also have $36,000 within the economic fund, development fund itself. And there's some sundry funds in there. I think it's a $10,000 line item for whatever purpose you'd want to use that for. This is on top of that.
Okay. I was curious on how much we paid out last year for everything and if that would be
Yep.
enough. And I agree. I hope the COVID stuff's over.
And I've already got some inquiries for facade improvements. So once we've designated this and get that going, I think there's going to be a couple of them right away.
Yeah, it's a good program to have, so.
Yes. Okay, so then I think I will move on. If nobody has any other questions, then I'll move on to those assigned and unassigned fund balance, which kind of ties into, or does tie into what we're talking about right now. I'm going to use my little thing here. Unassigned and unassigned fund. Okay, some of these I know are small dollar amounts and some of them we have to do statutorily. So, or if somebody gives the city money and they say, one of them on here says, I think it's 1,000, well, we have drone money, Hatton Stadium money. So some of these, there's just, we have to designate those funds because we hold them in trust and we hold them for a particular purpose. So some of these, we as a committee really have no say about what those dollars look like, but we certainly do, at like the new library reserve, that money was given for that new library. That's going to stay there until Ann's committee decides to spend it. And I know it's a small dollar amount, but it still has to be used for the purpose of which it was given. So we have to keep those separated. So that sits up there. The capital project reserve. So this is what we talked about tonight. So adding in that $140,000, as you can see, revenue from the 2020 budget, and I put the little asterisk there if approved. So what this will put us at is $721,913 in our capital reserve. But just remember, once I turn around next year, I'm going to start with that 721. I'm going to subtract that 148. I'm going to subtract that 140, and I'm going to subtract that 107 sitting underneath it, because those are all projects that need to move forward and are designated within that fund. Although it's a very healthy, I mean, it looks, it's a great dollar amount to have. That way, we know in the past we have had to purchase a piece of equipment that may have failed at the last second that we didn't expect it to purchase, and you have $100,000 sitting there just in case something happens. So that's where that dollar amount is at. It includes that $140,000 that we talked about tonight. Cable TV, this is the revenue we get from Charter. Is it still Charter? Charter? Spectrum, sorry. Spectrum. And then the true expenditures for the year. And then see how I said they had those expenditures, and this is where it would come out of. It doesn't come out of our operating, the general fund. It comes out of this designated fund area. Debt service, we just continue to move that forward. $113,000. I would not suggest getting rid of this. This looks good if we're bonding. We have some kind of dollars put aside just in case something happens where we couldn't come up with a interest payment or a principal payment. Boat launch, we add in revenue for the year, and then this year we did purchase the electronic base stations. Still very healthy, over 113,000. John Romberg would be so happy to see that.
Talk about that every year.
No way. He's never going away.
We talked last night about coming up with new plans for new docks.
The docks, yeah.
Looking at that.
Phone upgrade. This is going to be talked about at capital projects, using these dollars to replace our phone next year. So we'll have to use less of our capital projects dollars because we've saved some money for that project already. Trails and ATC. Again, this is money that is used just for the trail projects. So I take any money that it was expensed out of the budget and any revenue that came in. And then here's the downtown facade economic development fund that we were talking about. So it started out at 83. We took out the Steel King for 25. Small business COVID fund, facade, and then the revenue. Here's the 30,000 I'm adding in. Now also remember, you see 56, is that 56 or 59?
9.
59,000. The minute I turn around next year, I'm going to subtract $25,000 out of there for the Steel King commitment. It is our last year, next year for that Steel King commitment, just so you know. So next year will be our last payment. So then it'll be closer to $30,000 sitting in there for anything that economic development would like to use it for. Downtown revitalization. Now, there used to be a committee, if anybody wants to know the background on this $2,006. There used to be a committee that met downtown New London, and Harry Radix called me one day, and they weren't going to meet anymore. It was a downtown, I think it was the Downtown Revitalization Committee. So he said, here, will you take this money because I don't know what to do with it, and just designate it. So there it is. So
And
I said I
April-
would do that, and there it is.
April has a downtown revitalization committee going again. we
Yeah,
might
so
tap
if
into
they
that.
want to, yeah, I thought I heard that. So there's $2,006 sitting there. I told them I would take it and hold it in trust, so that's why that's there. Our retirement reserve sits at $605,000. Technology, this is a fund just in case something happens with computers or something, God forbid, if, somebody came in and hacked us and we didn't have anything anymore. It'd be something we could go to if we needed money, tomorrow to replace something. We started that, I want to say 5 or 10 years ago, just to have some dollars set aside just in case. Weather sirens, we'll be working through probably getting rid of this account eventually, as those weather sirens are retired, I guess is the best word we want to use for that. Cross to Park, designated funds just for that, radios just for that, drones, save the birds. Here's where I just have a ton of things that we hold money in trust. And we really, as a committee, can't do anything or move those dollars around. The gazebo money for styling, and then the wellness fund. The wheel tax, I'll go through this. So this is where we sit with the wheel tax at the end of the year. We had a $36,000 balance. We took in 141.8 and we expensed 122. So we're at about 56,000 sitting in that fund. And I'll go through that in more detail later. Our unassigned fund balance. So we expect revenues to come in even. Then remember, we decided to take out the 154 for the closure of the Economic Development Fund. So we expect this to come in about $3 million estimated at the end of the year. We'll have a more solid number once we get through our audit.
Was Phil, when he was talking about bonding and stuff, was he always at like that we should never be below 2 million in undesignated? Is that where he was at?
Correct, because you look at your shared revenue dollar amount here, even though policy says 25%, this is the dollar amount that we receive from the state every year. So you want to be closer to this dollar amount than this dollar amount. And I would say, and he never thinks that we have too much fund balance. And anytime you go to take out debt, they never think you have too much fund balance. Where you want still, but you still want to play that. You don't want to hold on to too much of the taxpayers' money either. You got to make common sense out of what this looks like. So I can't imagine this going to $4 million. I would say at that point, capital projects, there's all kinds of things that the city should be looking at. And that's also why every year, because we're in such a healthy unassigned fund balance area, that's why we're not closing our year into unassigned. We're saying, nope, we're going to use those dollars. We're going to do another street. We're going to buy another piece of equipment because that balance is already healthy. Now, if it wasn't, I would be saying, oh, we need to take that $100,000 and we need to add to our unassigned fund balance, because when we go bond next time, our interest rates are going to be through the ceiling. But because this is so healthy, that allows you to make these choices, or you wouldn't have those choices.
And a comment too on the shared revenue. Again, that's $2 million we kind of get at the end of the year. So if we did not have this fund balance to tide us over, we would be borrowing $2 million at the beginning of the year to pay our bills.
Yeah, we don't receive that money till November.
Right.
And it wasn't always like that. They used to give them earlier, and then they kept shifting and shifting and shifting. Pretty soon it'll be December.
Yep.
All right, so that's what those, any questions on any of those? Anyone want any explained any further? So this coincides with the revenues and expenditures that I talked about. I'm going to finish with talking about wheel tax because that's also in there. And then I have a bond schedule, and then we'll go into those resolutions. So Make this one small. Okay, so here's wheel tax. And I did talk about the dollar amount that was designated already, or assigned, I should say. I apologize. I use those. They used to be designated and then they turned to assigned, and they used to be unassigned, which is like, they're still in my head. So wheel tax. As you can see, I budgeted, or the city budgeted 130. We actually received 127. So it's getting closer. We were all over the place for a while because we weren't really sure what to expect. We'll see if it remains steady or how that's going to work out. But I'm thinking we're getting closer. High Street crossing. We were really close, one up, one down. So about the same of what was anticipated. And you can see there's about $5,200. So we just spent just about everything that came in this year, but we did have a balance from the year before. So we add the two together and then we end up with 56,503 at the end of the year. And then as you can see, we're thinking about, okay, what are we going to do with this in 2021? We have a number of things that we're going to be utilizing these dollars for. In 2021. And as we know, it only goes so far. So we have Shawano Street for sure that we need to utilize it for because we received grant funds for that. And then just a number of other things that we're thinking about, letting people know that we are utilizing these funds and not letting them just sit here. Any questions on that? And then the wastewater treatment plant schedule, that's just sitting there for now until that project gets complete. So there really hasn't been any change since last time. And then every year we show this is what we provide to each of the employees with their W-2s. W-2s have went out as were required by the federal government. Those went out by the 31st of January. I think even a little bit before that. And each of the employees receive a recap of their wages and fringe benefits. And I think a number of organizations do this today. So what it shows you is not only how much you make on your paycheck, but other things that the city is paying for that don't show up on that W-2. Health insurance, their HSA contribution, retirement, any dental, FICA Medicare, any PPE that the city paid for, wellness program that we run, and longevity. So every year I show you one of these just as an example of what the employees receive along with their W-2 to show them the other dollars and cents. So even though on their check they see $56,000, the city is actually paying $88,000 out to that employee when you add their fringe benefits in. And at the bottom, that employee's contribution, that's just for the employee pays that is paying that part. And we just do that because when they go get their taxes done, they all come in and they want to know that number. So this just helps us not have to, if they don't lose their paperwork, there it is. So that's just an example of what we provide to the employees at the end of the year. So they know exactly what the city is paying out. And then we can move into the resolution. We are at, so that is the end of number 3. And what the resolution does, we're at number 4, the resolution. So at the beginning of, when we do the budget process in October, as part of that process, the council approves a resolution. And at that time, we anticipate X amount general fund, X amount public safety, this dollar amount for public works. So we figured at the end of 2020, we were going to spend $1.3 million in general government, $2.6 million in public safety. Well, it doesn't always work out that way. So what we do is we have to statutorily put enough money within each of these items, each of these expenditure line items to cover what we actually spent. So I need to put $1.5 million in general government to cover what was actually spent in general government because it was greater than the 1.2. This isn't a change of the budget. If you look at the very bottom, the line, it's 8.536472. The next column is the exact same number. So all we're doing is shifting dollars from one line item to another to cover the expenditures within that line item. So, but statutory, we have to go through this process. The auditors will ask for it. Did you amend your budget so that you could pay for those items within the line item of which you spent it? And they will ask for this. So this has to be done so that I can provide this to them so they make sure that we're within our guidelines.
Is there a motion to,
So move.
Mike makes a motion, Tom seconds. Okay. Any questions on it? Not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Okay, and then the second one is a resolution assigning fund balance. It's also the auditors will ask me for. They want to make sure that you agree with, and all this is the same thing that I just showed you. In a assigned and unassigned fund balance, except it's just the bottom line. So 721,913 in capital projects reserve. Here's the cable TV fund, the debt service fund. So all this is exactly what we just went through, except it doesn't have the positives and negatives. It just has the final balance. Again, and this is, I have to provide to the auditors, so they make sure that in my books, I'm booking all of the assigned balance that we talked about tonight.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the resolution assigning fund balance for the year? Mike, Dave? Dave made the motion, Mike seconds. Any further questions on it? Not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. All right, thank you, Judy.
You're welcome.
Next, the finance director's report.
So I'm here, I talk about a lot of end of the year stuff that we had to get done. So, both the counties need their tax settlement. So actually I have to settle twice, with the county, once on January 15th, and then again coming up here either Friday or Monday. All the 1099s went out, the W-2s went out, the retirement reports went out, the federal government reports went out, the state government reports went out. So there's just a lot of things going on within our office besides tax collection that we have deadlines for. So just making sure that all of those things were being sent out and balanced and reconciled and all that kind of stuff at year end. So we're quite busy in our office, making sure all of those things are being done on time. I do some year-end adjustments, of course, for the finance committee. I spent some time going through all of that information for you folks tonight. I prepared the statement of taxes. I have to provide that to both of the counties. I think that's about all I have on here. I can tell you that, oh yeah, intended interviews for our new city clerk. We're getting closer on that process. John, I don't know that I've talked to you about the CDGB and that we had that approved, that we got the letter that we actually, that we met the LMI qualifications and that it's actually approved and that we move forward.
So it's
Yeah.
good deal.
Yeah, we actually got the stamp.
Great.
So it was, yeah.
So that work wasn't in vain.
Hallelujah. That was the process. So then we submitted the application for both projects, for the ADA and the road project. So I'm shocked we haven't heard from them yet for more questions on that, but we'll see. I'll keep you informed and let you know how that's moving forward. But I would assume because we got it in probably a week before the end of the month or something like that, that we should be ready to rock and roll eventually here. So I know it took a while with the trail too.
And I just had a meeting today with the engineers regarding the trail, and he made the comment because he's been talking to, the state regarding the CDGB grant for the trail side. He said they are so swamped right now with all these closed programs coming in. It's going to be a while, so don't be surprised if it's going to take a while because they're just swamped.
It was perfect because we were so busy with tax collections, like here to stay, please don't say anything for a while. So, yeah, so that went through. I think that's it. Any
Yeah, I
questions?
just want to thank Judy, Jill, Missy, and April, this whole staff back there for all this work that went out in time. Something we take for granted in here, that you're going to get your 1099 or W-2 or whatever on time. And based on my past experience, I tell you, I really appreciate that. Because I've worked for organizations where it wasn't done by scheduled time and so forth. So I know they put a lot of time in it, especially around Christmas and so forth. The rest of us were home enjoying a beer or two or whatever, that they were here working. So really appreciate that. Thank the staff for that. Any questions? Okay, thank you, Joe.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Next, questions and answers. Anybody? If not, I guess we're looking for a motion to adjourn. John? Second. John seconds. All in favor?
All right.
Aye. We are adjourned. All right, can we move right into capital projects? Okay, very good.
Just give me 1 second. You're giving me a hard time, Fred Zone.
Oh, Mayor was here, we'd take a 5-minute cigarette break. And get you.
I know, right? I'm ready. It's
ready?
Chad's
Okay.
ready.
All right.
You got us ready, Chad?
Yep.
Appreciate it.
All right. I would like to call this meeting of the Capital Equipment Projects Committee to order. You have in front of you the agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
Who moved?
Bob makes the motion. Is there a second? Mike seconds. All right. Any changes to the agenda? Not. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. All right. Review the schedule. Is that Judy?
All right, so what I provided tonight, I'm just gonna give you a little overview. So what I provided tonight is the 2021 through 2030 capital project schedule. I guess I can go to that.
The Excel file's open down below if you need that too.
Okay, thank you. So the reason that we provide this to you is that there's a lot of information in here, and department heads and people and staff and the team spends a lot of time putting this together. This is a very thought through process and a much needed process. I just saw a comment the other day about, I can't remember if it was on Ellers or one of the other bonding agencies that said, if your city doesn't have a 10-year capital plan, you should really consider putting something like this together. So even when we go out to bond, those bonding rate agencies are looking for this. Are you thinking about the future? Are you just living in today, or are you actually thinking about what are you going to replace? How are you going to pay for your streets? And all of these kinds of things. So this is just a really good practice to get into. And I'm pretty sure when we put it together the first time, it was a lot more work than it is today. And you can see as you get closer to 28, 29, and 30, things kind of, I'm not really sure. And we're not really sure what to put in there. But it's still a great process for any organization to go through. So that's why I provided that to you. And the other reason is if you have a question on anything that shows up on here, how come, why, what is this? You can go to that particular department and ask them. I see in 2020, 4 or 2025 that we're thinking about and considering doing this. And how come we're not talking about that? Or shouldn't we start talking about that? So it's just a way to kind of gather your thoughts about the future and to ask somebody questions about anything that might show up on this schedule. So that's the main purpose of why I provide this to you guys every year. And then what we do is we actually hone in on the current year. So our main purpose tonight is to take a look at 2021 and what are we going to do with the money that we have set aside for capital equipment and capital projects. So this is a great piece to have discussion at committee levels if you have questions, or go into a department head's office and say, I don't understand why you're asking for that, or is that piece of equipment really need to be replaced in that year, or all of those kinds of things. And the department heads are all going through this within their own mind as they're putting it together. Sometimes you have it in one year and they'll push it off to the next and say, oh, I think we can get another year out of that. Or I don't think that project should be done now, or we're bonding now and we have to push this off a year. So it's just a really good exercise within any organization, like I said, so that we're forward thinking about what we can do in our future. So I didn't expect to go through every single, year after year, but it's a good idea if you have a question on anything for you to take the time to go in and visit with somebody that could answer those questions for you. And again, it's a working document, ever evolving and always changing. So that nothing is written in stone, and things we know will change and things will come up that aren't on here. But one of the things I do tell department heads when they put something on here is it's never a good idea to remove it if you never want to think about it again. So even if it's something that you think, well, this might never come to fruition, once you put it on the schedule, at least your thought process is still with it, and it might happen eventually. As we know, sometimes things just take time. So I'm going to go back up to what we're going to actually, so that was item 1, just to review and talk about that 2020, 2030 schedule. So if I click on here, Jen, I'm going to get it.
Down below the Excel file, if you want to go to the Excel.
Oh.
Yep. Here, I got it. Right
There
there.
we go. Thank you. Appreciate it. So this is really our big discussion tonight. What I did do is I added in the 140,000. So you can see we have $640,000 in revenue tonight, to take a look at the line items that are highlighted. Now, all of these have went to committees, so you should have all have seen or discussed and talked about the line items that are highlighted. So within, let me move over a little bit here. Within Public Works, there's a flatbed and a dump plow truck. We have the big one of the radio equipment, which is under police, but it's really not all police. So that's why I listed other departments under there. Although it's being requested under the police line item, there's a lot, all of the departments are actually affected. Fire is looking at their thermal imaging camera. Missy has a number of items in interdepartmental, the phone system, the server, MS Office upgrade, and a copier at the pool. And then we have our street and sidewalk patching. The ejector pit at the Washington Center, some security cameras, and the replacement of the Washington Center gym doors. Okay, so those are the things that when we took a look at, or everyone took a look at the schedule, were the priorities among what is listed on here. So I guess I will open it up at this point and say if there's any particular, everyone's here that has a line to the fire chief. I know he was here. Maybe you totally forgot. That's right. Everyone except the fire chief, but I think his is pretty self-explanatory because they're thermal imaging cameras. When I had visited with him, he said that that was the thing on his list that he would really like to see. Also said he doesn't think they're going to cost that much. So I did say, well, you should go through the exercise of finding out exactly how much they're going to cost, because after we're done today, then we'll go back and see where we're at. I'll bring in all the revenues that we may have for sale of any of equipment. And then we can do this a second time and hopefully go back the list and find some other things that we can take care of this year.
So I'm pretty familiar. I was in that process.
Okay.
The one that we had was quite expensive, but you can get prices come down significantly. So I can kind of guide him with where they're pioneering moving forward. So I can definitely give him some. Also a certification program. I have certification it's way more involved than just buying a camera and pointing.
Kind of like a drone where you need.
Yeah, we're trained electrically. I mean, you can shoot a piece of metal that's heated to 200 degrees and the camera won't recognize that. So, what's heated, a lot more involved. But I'm more than welcome to help and give them some more information. $20,000 if they want to hear the camera. That is not not out of the realm, but if they're looking for something less, they may be able to get just as good a quality, depending on what he's looking for. And he's more than welcome to use our equipment as well to get a feel for exactly what to buy.
I'll email it to you. Yep,
Just some
appreciate it. Thank you. Otherwise, I guess I'll open it up to if anyone has any questions about a particular purchase on this list.
What is the radio project?
Well, the radio project is essentially replacing just about everything that we have, from our dispatch center to the repeaters up at Floral Hill, to our portable radios, to using some of our current radios to give to other departments. The utilities is also purchasing radios, and we're all going off the P25 platform for interoperability. Because right now we don't have 100% interoperability between radios and stuff, and that's what we're looking for in case of emergency, if we have a storm and stuff. But it's something that we've been looking at, I think, putting off about 4 or 5 years now. The equipment and the dispatch. Yeah, dispatch equipment's going to be about 15 to 20 years old, and average life for a lot of this equipment is about 8 to 11 years old, and our portables are at 11 right now. So try to get the project done. I mean, it's going to be fairly in depth for what we have to do. We're also going to be replacing. If you look up on top of the fire tower, there's a bunch of antennas up there. Half those antennas don't exist for anything. We also have some of Keith's equipment on there, and they're mounted to our antennas. So we're going to increase the height of that tower and then separate the two. So there'll be some rewiring and stuff. The county is also planning on building they got $80,000 budgeted to build a shed up at the water tower. So then we'll be moving the equipment. I put this in there because we don't necessarily want the complete public to know where our equipment is. But we're going to be transferring it from one location into that. So it's one of those that there's about $175,000 equipment, excluding theirs. I think yours, what, about 45,000? And then we put in the extra 25,000 for just unknown, antennas or wiring or stuff like that. So
Okay, I was only asking because I've never heard of it. This is the first time I've been in one of these, so I didn't know.
yeah, and then some of the unique stuff that we'll have with the capability of this, I'll be talking to the school district too, like they've carried little portables in there. And the new dispatch equipment will actually be able to tie in or patch each frequency together. So if we have two frequencies that can't communicate, we'll actually, I'm not going to say drag one into the other so that we can communicate through that. So
Cool.
And one thing that Chief was talking about, just the communication, you might think, well, do we really need it for the Parks and Rec and Public Works side of it? When we've had storms in the past, cell phones go down. We can't depend on them, and we need to talk to each other when we're doing cleanups and those emergency processes. So
Well, if
you
you're
definitely
gonna
need
do it,
those
it might as well
radios
be-
at that time.
If you're gonna do it, it might as well be everybody.
I know the trucks for the plow guys, they're having issues over right now. And if we have a snowstorm, I know they got the electrical problem fixed, but we're down to 2 plow trucks.
Yeah.
And if we have a storm, which we're going to get, so I'm for replacing that plow truck and that flatbed. Them are 2 critical pieces that the street department needs.
And I don't know if I talked to you or if I talked to Mike, we did get that second plow truck back. They did fix the problem.
We did.
We got it back, so
Yeah.
you have that for tomorrow's storm.
Okay, any other questions for Jay?
Let's see. Like I said, you can choose to, you actually have enough money. We might go a little bit in the negative. I wouldn't worry about it because we do have 2 pieces of equipment for sure. I know the chief has a piece of equipment he's going to be selling. And then the flatbed will be sold and the other piece of equipment. So even if we see like $20,000, $30,000 negative, we could purchase everything highlighted tonight. And then what we would do is I would see where those revenues come in. And we do have some couple other items we'd really like to get yet this year. So I would, once we saw where those came in, we would hold another capital projects meeting and talk about and discuss that.
That phone system
The phone.
down.
Yep.
Don't we already have money in that unassigned
Yep.
fund for that?
Yes, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned, good catch. So the phone system is $53,000, but it will only cost $8,000 out of the capital projects fund to pay for it because we have those dollars. Also, the the office, we're gonna take half of that out of the technology fund. So we're gonna utilize some of those designated funds. Now, also in the meantime here, Jay has brought up so we're gonna be taking a look at the phone system. We're gonna be able to get that a lot cheaper than we anticipated too.
Okay. Well, I didn't know,
Okay. Perfect.
I didn't know if it was gonna cost 90,000 or
Nope,
if you're adding them together.
nope, that's an $8,000 purchase. Those two, yep, that was it for the designated funds. The rest of them are. Yep. Okay, and how much, you know?
It depends on the one for this one in $8 a month per phone.
We can adjourn the meeting now, I guess. Any other questions for Judy?
So now if we approve all this stuff and there's some money left over, next time we have a whack at this thing, if there's anything else that somebody needs, we can approve that also?
Correct.
Okay, just so I got my figures right here.
Yep, so we're hoping, we approve everything, we will be at about, I want to say about 20,000 in the negative, somewhere close to that. I'm taking into account the designated funds. I expect at least, I mean, I would expect more than that coming back from these equipment sales that we're going to see. So once we know more concretely what those dollars are gonna look like, we would call another capital projects meeting and then talk about any other purchases that we're going to be doing. I know that there's two for sure that are being, the one is this one right here, that dump truck, and the wiring and dispatch area. I know those are two that are higher on the priority of people right now. So I'm hoping to squeeze them to in there yet somehow.
I mean, those two trucks, that does not include the trade-in or
Right.
revenue, so we should be able to see that to help these numbers on the
Offset.
back end. Yeah.
And I know Mike has talked to Luke, I think, over there about what are the piece of equipment we got over there? We got the old snow blower. The old, that if we could get that back on that web page where they sell that stuff.
Correct. There's a couple pieces of equipment like that, the old leaf pickup things that's been on my back burner for getting on Wisconsin surplus for a long time. I just haven't had the time to do it.
Sure.
Luke was gracious to come up to me. We talked about, he's like, can I take a kick at the cat? So him and Michelle are trying to go at it. I'm like, go for it. So
Okay.
if we get those on there, we get those sold, that's just additional revenue that can come back in here.
Sure. Okay.
Just one thing I'll point out, Judy, if you can go down to the capital projects for the street patching and the sidewalk patching, we are proposing to bump up the street patching. We usually have done 25 in the past. We're asking you to do that to 50. And then we also did not do our sidewalk patching last year. And if you caught, there was some carryover funds from that. So potentially we would be doing a $50,000 street and $50,000 sidewalk patching projects this year.
Okay.
For that.
I would suggest we leave those
Yeah.
and not
Some of the things we got.
take
Yeah.
from. Right.
Okay, any other questions?
So, what I suggest, Dave, is to go through one by one.
You wanna go through one by
Yep,
one?
that's what we did in the past. We've approved things one by one. And except with the exception of the street and the sidewalk, we've done those together. So if you want to remain consistent
Sure.
for history's sake, so that it's really easy for people to see. I do have them already listed one by one.
So I look for a motion to replace the flatbed truck.
So moved.
Dave makes a motion. Is there a second? Who was the second? Tom? Okay. Any questions? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next, motion to replace the dump plow truck.
So moved.
Mike makes a motion. So second. John seconds. Any questions?
Bob?
Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next, motion for the police radio project. John makes, Bob
Second.
seconds. Any questions? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next, motion for the thermal imaging. Bob makes a
Second.
motion. John's.
He made the motion, I'll second.
Okay, John makes the motion. Bob seconds. You're keeping up here. Who's taking minutes?
I'm helping on the
I am.
screen.
Judy, yes. Judy,
I
yes.
am.
Okay, all, any questions on thermal imaging? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next motion on the phone replacement system.
So moved.
Okay, so the phone, let's just be clear on this one. 53,000 using 45,000 in designated and $8,000 out of this one.
So that would be the motion.
Yep.
And Mike?
Second.
And Dave seconds. Any questions on that? Not all in favor, say aye. Carried. Next motion on server upgrade.
So moved.
Bob makes.
Second.
Dave seconds. Any questions? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next motion on the MS office upgrade.
So moved.
Mike makes a motion.
Second.
Dave seconds. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Next motion on copier replacement.
So moved.
Bob makes. John seconds. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Wait. That one was Bob Bisa and who was second?
John.
That's right. Okay, good. I just want to be sure.
BJ. BJ.
Okay, and those next two we said we can combine, Judy. Is that what you said?
Yes, these two I had combined.
So moved.
So, and Mike makes a motion for the street patching and sidewalk patching. Is there a second?
Second.
And John seconds. Any questions? And we were sticking with the 50 and 25 there, Judy. You said right.
No.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. All right, next, motion on the ejector pit.
So moved.
Bob makes the motion. Is there a second? Second. Dave seconds. Any questions?
What is it?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next motion on security cameras.
So moved.
Bob makes the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mike seconds. Any questions on security cameras? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next, motion on replacement of the gym doors.
So moved.
Bob makes motions. Or second?
Second.
Dave seconds. All, any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
So you can see this is where we're at, 23.6. And that's a negative.
All right.
Sound like an auctioneer.
Going once, going twice.
Just trying to stay consistent with what we did.
Very good. So we've made all the motions then, I assume, so we're good to go with that. So what's left is scheduling the next meeting, Judy?
I think we will wait until we get some of those revenue estimates in.
Okay.
And then we'll schedule another meeting, but I would certainly like to do that like April. I'm thinking so that if people need to purchase things that they can move forward on that process. So April-ish. We'll probably do it again after finance. Seemed to work out well.
Just out of curiosity, have you gotten any feedback from department heads that there's items on there that really we need to go with this year?
I have not. So to be honest with you, we all kind of get together and decide we can live without this, we can live without that. This is needed more. Prioritize what is on the list. So there isn't much, I know the rescue boat is something that the fire department is going to be looking at, but did you ever talk to them about that?
I mentioned it to him that one of these days we should go up there and talk to the guys, so.
So the chief was saying, you know, and I did mention this to the fire chief also, that I think that would be a great item for donations.
Yes.
I think people, I feel like that's how we got the first one, if I remember correctly. But I think that the community would embrace
Exactly.
a fundraising for that
There are
fireboat.
groups like the
Yep.
Lions. or
That
whoever,
rescue boat.
something like this would Be right up their alley.
Yep. And then I know there's going to be some other suggestions on how we could possibly fund that boat. So,
Very good. Okay, sounds good. All right, so with that then, adjournment. So move. Mike makes, Tom seconds. All in favor?
Hey.
Motion is, the meeting's adjourned.